what gives me optimism and what makes me, not at least bail ship right now, is that, like, you know, if you do a thought experiment and you say, if you race to the bottom, if we're just reading headlines, right, and if we're not reading, like, what's going to happen? Like, we're just it's going to be just people yelling at each other about a sentence that no one's read anything about. Like, I think there's always going to be a place for in-depth reporting and original reporting and original analysis. Like, and maybe the group of people who read it will get less, or maybe it has to be repackaged in ways to appeal to a broader demographic. But um, I just can't imagine a world where we're either just repackaging press releases or just repackaging, like, statements from, government officials, right? Then that world saddens me. Um, so kind of jumping off of that, like, the thing that I think gives me hope is, like, okay, well, I don't want that world, and I don't think a lot of people want that world either. So there's always going to be a place for, like, an independent voice and an independent, kind of, I don't know, take on what's going on. Um,
I mean, I agree, and it's something that I think about a lot, and it's something that I think that we need a lot more, like independent journalists and some, not just independent media, but just like independent journalists and people that are actually doing a lot of the stuff that's not even getting reported by us. Um, but yeah, I do think it'll be interesting to see over the next 5 years, like how people consume their information, what sort of media they, or what sort of information they want. Like, I'm mostly of the written word.
mhm,
And despite this is a new medium, but I'm intrigued by how also I'm going to have to write differently moving forward.
mhm,
And how that's also going to have to get repackaged and what the language is going to have to be like moving forward. And if I think there's always going to be a space for like lengthy the New York or the Verge style research pieces and that sort of stuff. But there's a part of me that also thinks there's going to be a lot more like short bites onto the next, onto the next, onto the next. And I mean, finding out where your place is or what actually interests you or what serves best is going
mhm.
to be an interesting tug of war, I think, moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I, like, totally agree that everyone's just trying to experiment and see what works. You know, like, just because articles written the way they were, 50, 60 years ago, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be written the same way now. I mean, but there is also, like, I think, there's like kind of the productized version or idea of journalism where it's just like, this is purely a utility. But then there's also, like, the aesthetic point too, right? Where it's like, there's something beautiful about, like, an extremely well written and, like, long form narrative nonfiction piece, right? Um, and, like, okay, maybe not a lot of people read it, but, also not a lot of people really understand, like, I don't know, the complexities, I don't, of a, like, a Matisse painting, in MoMA. Um, but it still is beautiful. So, I mean, there's also, like, an aesthetic point of view too, where there is something like, if you like a really well written news article or, piece of nonfiction is, I think, has value inherent in and of itself.